On the day she appeared, the world was terrorized. Not even the Sword Emperor himself could fight her head-on. She was a monster like no other. But as the Sword Emperor had already achieved his goal, he asks her to kill him. So, in his final strike, he finally appears, a scarlet-haired swordsman who blocked that monstrous attack and leaped onto the Moon Fairy because today is the day she will be cut in half by the swordsman Moonbreaker. And thus, the wave of dragon attacks was granted, and on that day, 9 sword energy rays fell from the skies. 6 years later, at Waryong Mansion, our little scarlet-haired one is taking a beating from the woman. She's saying that today they received important guests and he hasn't been cleaning the yard properly. So she says he's ignoring this order because she's not his mother, and that's why she says she's going to teach him a lesson today while his brothers laugh at the situation because he's so timid he gets beaten without fighting back. And now we're on the road with the guests who are going to meet their father's only sworn brother, Uncle Yeon. And come to think of it, the woman is looking for her daughter who is actually sitting on top of the carriage. Inside the carriage, one of the sons is asking the father to tell more about Uncle Yeon, and he starts recounting that old story from 6 years ago when Yeon and his sword arts were the most perfect under the heavens, and if it weren't for Yeon, he wouldn't be alive here today, since his technique of the 9 celestial swords is capable of matching the most advanced ones from the Sword Emperor's clan. But then the son asks if it's so strong, why aren't they known to the world? And that's because Yeon retired and didn't pass on the techniques to anyone, so he's going to tell them something important now. Uncle Yeon had 2 wives and the one he loved the most was the second one, but unfortunately, she died after giving birth 6 years ago, and after that, he lost all reason to live, locking himself in the room where the second wife used to stay. And because of that, when they are at Waryong Mansion, they shouldn't mention anything about the second wife. And now back at the mansion, the woman was still hitting the boy until a guard arrives saying that the master left the room as soon as he heard that the Nangong clan's carriage entered the village. And then the woman starts wiping her hands of blood, angry because he went out to see his sworn brother even though he didn't, no matter what she did. So the woman orders that boy to stay out of everyone's reach while they are receiving the guests because otherwise, trouble will arise again, and then she leaves with her other brothers happily while for him there was only misery, and she tells her eldest son that they met the daughter of Uncle Nangong and that's why he needs to treat her well. So, they finally arrived while Nangong was introducing his wife and children, but when they went to introduce the second daughter, she had already gone out for a walk. And now, the mansion's woman is approaching, saying that their 4th son also does a lot of this. And Yeon was also introducing his wife and children, and the snake's name is Baek Minju. And so they're inviting everyone inside, while she asks Moonbeak to look for their daughter in the mansion. As all of this was happening, our young Scarlet was in the most isolated corner in a punishment position, wondering when the guests would leave because his arms were already hurting. He was hungry and tired too, and that's when he collapsed on the floor. Until some time later, someone comes close, and when he sees that shadow, he immediately starts apologizing, thinking the woman came to beat him again. But when he opened his eyes, it wasn't that woman but a girl, who was probably the guest's daughter who went out for a walk. Meanwhile, at the mansion, they were having dinner, asking if they wanted to unite the families with a marriage. But Yeon just says he appreciates the offer and that it's better for his children to answer for themselves, as parents shouldn't choose their children's marriage, something that happened to him himself to marry the ugly one, a marriage of convenience. And she's probably pissed about it because she's dying to marry her eldest son to their daughter. So now she says she wants to ask a favor for the Nangong clan to train her son Moonbeak. And Yeon says the same thing, he would also like to ask for this favor, but then the leader of the Nangong clan asks if he's okay with it since the eldest son won't inherit the 9 celestial swords, and that's because he can't pass on these martial arts at his age anymore. And there's also another reason he was going to talk about later, because he ended up fainting in the middle of the dinner table. Now we're with Moonbeak, who is still looking for their daughter, until he hears something over there, and it was his sister sucking up to the guy's son there, and she was all saying he killed all his enemies. But then Moonbeak shows up there apologizing for her bothering him, and in the end, they both ended up fighting while the other thinks it would be nice if his sister were as lively. But then he apologizes again, and they go look for their sister together, the same one who just found our Scarlet boy, until he remembers there would be important guests, so if his mother finds out about this, he's screwed, and that's why he bolted out running. But the girl just grabbed and pulled him back while he kept apologizing thinking he was going to get beaten again, and she herself wondering seeing all those bruises, they don't seem like the result of training, and he was skinny too, and by the red hair, he must be the swordsman's son from this mansion, so she lowered her hand coming up while he was desperate with fear. And that's when she understood that he never received proper care. And then she just ran her hand through his hair, asking what his name is. And the name of our Scarlet boy is Yeon Jeokha, the 4th son of the swordsman Yeon. Then she says she'll protect him while he cries with happiness. And then she took his hand, and they escaped from the mansion through a hole, and so we ended up in the village that was nearby. Then she bought some skewers, and they were eating while back at the mansion, The Sword Emperor is saying he was shocked by how he ended up in that state. But Yeon said he already told him that the advanced technique of his clan is passed down by Jiutian Xuannu, the Chinese goddess of war, but now he can't see her anymore since the day his second wife died. And with her death, there was a baby identical to him, but he didn't have the courage to see him even though he knows her death wasn't his fault. And so he wants to ask Chief Nangong one last favor. Even though he has no right to say this, he hopes he'll take care of his children, as they are poor children who grew up without a father. And so the guards are finally arriving because they found the young lady who arrived holding hands with Jeek. And then the other one acted like a concerned mother, as later on, they will be in trouble while the young lady was eyeing her with contempt. Then the other brothers also arrived, while the eldest of the Nangong was surprised that she was holding hands with this child, and Munbeek too because he lost the brunette today, and so they had to part ways. And the woman was furious, and probably after that, all hell broke loose. But in the 7th month of that year, Lord Yun Murion died in his sleep, and as soon as he died, Minju summoned dozens of warriors from her clan to fill his absence in the clan, and the warriors she summoned became known as the White Tiger Squadron. And besides that, Newbeak had gone to train at the Nangong clan, while Minju assumed the position of the mansion's official master. And after the guy kicked the bucket, she searched all over the mansion to see if Lord Yun had left his martial arts manuals, but there was nothing, so she ordered everything of his to be thrown into the warehouse, and when they were taking the things, they were supposed to lock that brat inside too. And our Scarlet Boy ended up locked inside that warehouse where his father's things were, and when the doors closed, that room became a dark and silent void where he ended up sleeping out of fear. And the next day, the only thing he received through a small opening was a plate of water and a potato, so he ate that while he saw something shining on the other side. And then he went to take a look, and when he removed the cloth covering it, there was a large foggy mirror back there, and he ran his hand over it and saw his own reflection, only it wasn't really his reflection because it started moving inside the mirror. And after that, time passed, and winter came while the guards were saying they would soon have to dispose of his corpse, but that mirror was still there moving inside, and he himself said he was no longer afraid of it. In fact, he didn't even have the strength to be afraid because he was about to die of cold. Then the mirror picked up a wooden stick and began to make strange movements, and the more he did that, it seemed like martial arts movements, the same ones he saw his brothers training. So he remembered that the teacher told his brother that if he learned this, he would be able to circulate core energy to create yang energy and create and maintain it, and the first step of the 9 celestial arts. And then he remembered that his brother could create warm air even in winter with this, so he grabbed a piece of wood to do the same as the mirror. And so he tried, fell, and the mirror laughed, but he kept going until he finally succeeded. He no longer felt cold and was able to create warm air just by following the mirror's movements, and if he kept it up, he'd survive. So now the mirror is showing him to continue, but for him, it was already good at that level. And then the mirror began showing other great movements as if it were teaching him the 9 celestial arts, but he had no interest in martial arts, yet the mirror persisted, mocking him for saying so. Then he took the wooden stick and said he could do it too, and so he continued through winter, summer, spring, and he continued following the mirror's steps, and even when he tried to give up, he rose again and continued, and he also realized that the movements of the 9 celestial arts that it showed before had similar patterns to those of the clan, but much more difficult. So this could be an even more advanced martial art than the one his brother practiced, and thus the mirror showed him some writing up there saying that this was the true mirror of the Jiutian fairy, the one that disappeared for his father, and at that moment, the 900 words that were inside the mirror appeared up there and flowed into his head. And it was here that he realized that the true art he was following was the technique of the Inquisitor's Sword of the Heavens, and so the one who spent his whole life being abused was thrown into a warehouse, but this misfortune helped him find the mirror that would change his life. So a child who was supposed to be killed began to undergo changes, and the secret manual that was not passed down was indeed slowly passed by that mirror, and because he was stuck in that warehouse, he focused all his strength on learning what the mirror showed. And so, 10 years had already passed, and he finally managed to do exactly the same movements as the mirror, and now at the mansion, Newbeak had just arrived after 10 years of training, and Minju rushed to see him, along with her other 2 brothers, and who was also there were the descendants of the Nangong clan, Mishyun who looked more beautiful, and Chu, the eldest. Then in the middle of the conversation, Mishyun ends up leaving again like that time, and Minju tells the guards not to let her near the warehouse, and actually there's something about the warehouse that the guard wanted to talk about because he checked last night and Master Jeek disappeared. So the woman got furious, and actually what happened inside the warehouse was that he finally managed to do the movements, but now the mirror points upwards where there was a crack. and finally, after spending 10 years in darkness, he would see the sky for the first time. And the mirror confirms that today is the day of his departure, and in this way, he ascends upwards, and when he looks down, the mirror had already disappeared. So the time has finally come. And at that moment, Minju is going to the warehouse and realizes that he escaped through the hole, but she tells the guards that it is not necessary to bother looking for that brat. And meanwhile, he is there in the city seeing all those people for the first time. Back at the mansion, she lies to Mubik that Jeok has been missing for 3 days, and even after sending people after him, they haven't been able to find him yet, and the young lady overheard everything. So she thought, it's been 3 days since he fled, but the blankets and the furniture in his room were new, there was no trace that a human lived here, and she just left Minju talking to herself while even Mubik asks if there really wasn't something more to it because he had never seen his sister disciple act like that, as she is known as the charming mind reader, so there must be a reason for her to have run off like that. And so Mubik arrived at the warehouse where the young lady had already realized what happened. She had kept Jeok imprisoned inside the warehouse, and so she says she will inform her father about this, and she will already be returning with her brother. Meanwhile, Jeok is walking through the city until he comes across one of the mansion guards, and he starts walking to the other side, but the guard stops him to check his identity, and that's when he runs through the city until he finds the exit in front. So he ran and the guard went after him, but when the gates were closing, the guard appeared behind, but even so, he managed to dodge and continued until the closing gate would crush both of them, and at that moment the Scarlet Boy held that giant gate with just one hand, and after seeing this strength, the guard was scared shitless and said it was just a joke. So he left, and our boy finally escaped from his imprisonment 10 years later, and now the story of this monster who will become the strongest in this world will finally begin. After escaping the city, our Scarlet Boy ended up in the middle of a forest starving, and even though he knew it's dangerous to eat random things on the mountain, he saw a mushroom that looked very tasty, and so he took 2 bites, and when night fell his stomach was hurting, his vision blurred, and his head spinning, and that's how he ended up passing out in the middle of the mountain. The next day, 2 guys were passing by who saw him almost dead on the ground, but at least he was breathing, so the one with long hair said they'll take him since this is the first time he's encountered someone worse off than them, and according to the other, they already have 6 members but they won't go bankrupt if they add 1 more. And after a while, he was dreaming about the fairy until that same long-haired guy wakes up and asks why he passed out in the middle of the mountain, and the Scarlet Boy thanks him and takes the opportunity to ask where they are. This is actually the hideout of Mount Wufeng, and they are all bandits. This bald guy is the second eldest brother, Tako, the long-haired one is the third, Ma-hyun, the one with the mustache is the fourth, and the big-haired one with the sash is the patriarch, Peng-yun, and according to him, they saved his life, and Jeek must repay that from now on, meaning he needs to learn to work seriously to help them. Then the one with the mustache says he's being too harsh on a kid and offers him a potato to eat, and seeing that scene, he even refuses, saying he's not hungry, but his stomach keeps growling. But they say they won't ask for money from him, while the other one is thinking he talks as if he were a child even though he looks like he's 15. The second brother comes saying they can give him secondary tasks since he seems like a good kid, so the eldest grabs him by the clothes because he's going to show how things work, and outside he's all trembling, asking not to be beaten because he's traumatized by Minju, but the other says it's not related because they're going to collect vegetables. And the Scarlet Boy says he's not fit to be a bandit since he's not strong, but the first brother says that in this world, there are 2 types of people, those who take things from others and those who lose things, and which side he wants to be on, but he still didn't understand. Then he asks if he really wants to continue living hungry and being called a bum. The Scarlet Boy doesn't want that, he doesn't want to lose to anyone, and that's why if he could choose he wants to be the one who takes things from others, and so the mentality was set, and the boss tells him to look back, and from the first peak to the 5th are their territories. They rule Mount Wufeng, and no one can ignore them here, and if he becomes part of their family, he will also be a ruler of these lands, and that's how he was proclaimed as the 7th brother of the family. And now there's another important thing he needs to learn, so the first brother starts shouting that they are the best, and Jeek should shout too. At that moment, our Scarlet Boy felt excited for the first time since his birth. Now nothing else mattered, all that dark past as they say turned into the past, since his newfound longing for life awakened his key of the 9 heavens, and so he shouted with all his might that they are indeed the best, a scream that released all his pain that he had kept inside, because now this is a milestone for the new beginning of the Scarlet Boy, and so now he will learn household chores with the 6th brother before learning martial arts, and thus, Jeek's life in the mountains began. He learned how to survive and was able to adapt to this new life. It was a perfect daily life, but of course, not every day was tranquil. Why the bandits of Mount Wufeng were from common families and didn't have a high level of martial arts. However, even returning injured, they make the most of the little things of everyday life. And so, Jeok, who lived a torturous life after becoming a bandit, felt happiness for the first time. Then, one day, the first brother and the others were kneeling to these two guys who are part of the Bandits Guild, which was a guild created a long time ago to impose fear. But what happened was the opposite. Until one day, a monstrous man appeared in this guild. The experts from the 7 sects and days schools joined forces to defeat him, but no one returned to tell the tale. And so, his fame spread throughout the world, being known as the demonic lord who devastates the heavens, and as a result, several martial world experts came hoping to join the Bandits Guild. And after accepting renowned individuals, the Bandits Guild became one of the most powerful in the whole world. And that's exactly why everyone was kneeling. They wanted to be part of the Bandits Guild. But the guys say that a bunch of vagabonds like them don't have enough qualifications to carry the guild's flag, and the boss said he'll arrange for 3 more members, only it actually needs 4 because this is just a kid, since for him to join it would be up to 10 people. But his friend calls him to talk a little bit, because in reality, they'll need to accept these guys since in half a month their boss will be checking the hideout, and if they don't meet the target they're screwed. And they don't need to worry because even if they accept these guys here, in this area there are large merchant groups, and so they'll end up being killed anyway, and that way they'll be able to reach their goal and won't worry about weaklings. So they come back saying they accept them into the Bandits Guild, and that they should have at least 10 members before winter, and that way the bandits of Mount Wolfing celebrated because the merchant groups paid tolls to the bandits. But what they didn't know is that nearby they are strong, so they just hope everyone disappears before 2 months pass. However, their expectations were wrong, and so on another day, the Scarlet Boy was sweeping the door while his brothers went out to work, and now, unlike before, he also wanted to go with them. And this way a month passed, 2 months, until 3 months later he was so used to the tasks that he finished quickly and had nothing else to do. So he decided that now he would review what he learned in the warehouse, so that one day he could go with his brothers through the mountains. And so, the next day, the boss said that these people volunteered to be part of Mount Wolfum. So the first one steps forward, he and Li Chul, who fled after hitting the magistrate's son in the region. This is Chun, who wants to lessen his family's burden, and this is Han Chai, who is 19 years old and was sold by her father to a brothel, so she ran away from there and decided to live in the mountains. Meanwhile, the second brother is telling Jeok that now he won't need to do household chores anymore, so he'll be able to join the trips through the mountains, and the thin mustache said he knew he was practicing in secret because he wanted to go with them on the trip. And so the family ranking was decided in the order in which you became a member, but the big guy asks if he had talent, could he rise in rank? But according to the boss, they're from the Bandits Guild, so the strongest stays ahead if he defeats the one above, and he's happy to know because he had 3 years of experience in the military. In the end, he chose the 7th, who seemed to be a bit dim-witted, so he wants to be above him. Then, our Scarlet Boy says he'll fight him for his position, and so the fight will begin, the big guy versus Jeokha, and the other brothers were proud of him for not being afraid. And then the fight started. The big guy came with a punch, but Jeok dodged it, and as he had no weapon, he ended up in the air and just took a punch in the face. And now even the brothers were thinking of stopping because he knew nothing about fighting, but then he, angry that he was getting beaten up, got up and punched the big guy in the face, who just buried him in the ground. But when he seemed to have one, Jeok got up saying he would never give up his position, and the big guy is wondering how he managed to get up after that beating. And so he went up again, but now Jeok had the idea to think that his fist is like a blade, so now it was just a punch in the stomach that made the big guy fall to the ground unconscious. And that's how the Scarlet Boy won the dispute, while no one understood how he did it. But anyway, the winner of this battle was decided. And the next day, the first brother ordered to give him a sword because he was impressed with his fight, and he will also join the trip starting tomorrow. And our boy got excited because now the second brother will teach him the sword exorcism technique. So he explained how it worked and the two practiced, while the other told the first brother that the bald one really liked the younger brother because he didn't want to teach that technique to them either. And so the next day, there was a merchant group passing through the mountains, but at that moment, the bandits of Mount Wolfing appeared to collect the toll, and the guy was surprised because he claims to be from the Bandits Guild and has less than 10 members. And then the boss ordered everyone to fill those guys with arrows for mocking Mount Wolfing, but that guy in blue cut all the arrows with a sword. So they realized they were screwed because there's someone with strong martial arts in the merchant group, and all the guards prepare to engage in battle, while the first brother says he'll draw their attention and everyone else should flee. But at that moment, Jeok steps forward saying that on Mount Wolfing, nobody can dare to laugh at them, and everyone was amazed, both the guard and the brothers. Then the guy in blue says he's just a kid and if he reconsiders his mistakes, he can let him live. But the Scarlet Boy is impatient today, saying he talks too much for someone who's going to be beaten to death, while the second brother asks if the other guy taught him that. But the guy in blue goes for it and Jeok cuts his sword with just one strike and was prepared preparing to beat him up again, while the guy in blue was scared because this kid is very strong, and when he realizes he almost had his head cut off in that attack, the guy in blue bows apologizing and asking him to spare his life. And so they managed to get a generous fee from that group while our monster was blossoming to the world. Then when they were coming back, the first brother asks how he did that, and actually, he used the sword exorcism technique that the second brother taught him, and not understanding, he asks Jeek to show them that technique. So he did. The guys gathered around, and it was just sword cuts, and when he gave the final cut, he brought down an entire tree, while everyone was surprised asking him to teach that technique, and even Han Chai came saying that it's really cool and she also wanted to learn, and the first and second brothers were thinking he's someone amazing. Then, on another day at the Mountain of the Five Peaks, there was Jeek versus another merchant group. The guy came at him, he dodged, cut the old man's sword, and already had his sword at his neck. And so Jeek went on patrols from autumn to winter, but none of the warriors from the merchant school were able to stop his attacks, and there was even a poster being known as the bandit who was good with swords. And now, because of these rumors, countless people came to join Mount Wolfing, and so, 3 months later, the Mountain of the Five Peaks quickly became a fortress. They began to gain fame within the province and their morale was growing, but with the fortress becoming larger, other dangers would arise. And so, these two had a plan to overthrow the seventh brother and remove the boss from power, since the rest wouldn't be able to take even one punch, besides the fact that the boss and vice boss would be nothing to this old man. And this is number 26, the Northern Sword, Gumul Shimyang. And he was wondering how a bunch of weaklings like them became known in the Green Mountain. And this Green Mountain is the dream of all mountain bandits, since like beggars have the beggar sect, bandits have the Green Forest, and the commander of this forest is the demon lord who devastates his enemies, known to be monstrously strong. But the question remains, how would weaklings like them be recognized by the Green Forest? Or could it be the rumors about Jeek being the most powerful, although he thinks not even though he hasn't seen him in action yet because there are no patrols due to the weather. So other guys showed up to join this plan of taking their fortress, thinking they're just weaklings. Then, elsewhere, Han Chai was telling Jeek that those 5 who entered last are asking for a rank fight, and she even says they were mocking the boss. So Jeek gets pissed off, breaking the house door, because he's going to teach them a lesson, but the fourth brother was there asking what he's going to do, and when he said what he was going to do, the brother said that's what the boss was worried about, as he wasn't supposed to kill the newcomers yet. And so, the next day, the battle for ranks will begin, and those who want a challenge come forward. Old Man Yang's group came with 5 people. Then the boss says they can choose who they want to fight to get their ranks. However, starting from number 7 upwards, they must fight each of them in sequence, meaning first they need to get through the monster to be able to fight the others. And the old man already says he's aiming for first place because they are all 5 notorious martial masters. So the battle begins. Jeek came walking asking which of the weaklings will get beaten up first, and seeing that pressure, the elders passed the guy at the back to fight first since it's normal for the lower ranked ones to go, right. While the guy who was about to say he felt a stomachache, the other just pushes him while Jeek asks if he's the first, and just from seeing that sensation, he was already scared shitless. So he says that since they're not enemies, they'll fight with clean hands, at least so he won't die. And he comes forward, and it was just one to the mouth, while Jeek tells the next one to come. Now the bald guy who asked to fight with clean hands too, and this was just one to the stomach. But the other bold one wanted to face with weapons, and Jeek just attacked the man asking for the next one, because now only the elders were left to take a beating from our monster, and they were scared shitless, saying they needed time. But Jeek gave them a stare and the first of them stepped forward with a fan, saying he wouldn't use swords against someone from the same tower. So he, thinking Jeek fell for it, went at him since the fan is his weapon, but none of that helped, he just defended with his arms. The old man came again and he defended until Jeek realized this wasn't an ordinary fan, and the old man thinking he had already won the fight, just took a punch to the face and flew away. And so the next one will use swords, right? So he grabbed them and went at him, while the old man desperate says he has no more intentions of fighting, but Jeek just stares, saying if he dares to mess with his brothers, he'll be the next to die. And so the old man apologized in front of everyone, and the crowd all went away with Jeek. Now in Haija village, where the merchant union is located, there was a crazy guy running to tell the master that they had problems because the rumors were true. The elders were seen at the fortress of the 5 peaks, in addition to countless merchants who have already been affected by them in the autumn. So Muriang asks who among the elders became the boss, but as for that, the boss remains the same, since based on the rumors, the 2 lost in the rank fights, and 30 people have already joined the fortress, and yet the boss here was thinking it was impossible. That's why Muriang stands up, saying they won't allow mountain bandits to cause chaos, and he'll use this opportunity to get rid of both the bandits and the elders, as he has an army from the merchant union. So, at the fortress of the 5 peaks, Jeek was cleaning his sword when a guy passed by mentioning he remembered Jeek when he heard that martial masters even use a leaf to cut people. But at that moment, fire arrows started hitting the walls because the Union army was attacking, and Jeek was furious because they were breaking the walls they had built. As if the fire wasn't enough, they even pulled them down into pieces. But as they passed the first wall, they were screwed because there was another wall. So now Jeek himself will break this wall, and Jeek, back there, asked if the enemy leader is in front of them, and on the first swing, Jeek comes already breaking the barrier and everything in his face, and he went straight at him asking if he was the leader. So, they exchanged blows and the axe guy was shocked by all this strength, so that must be the sword-wielding bandit from the rumors. But none of that matters because he just set fire to Jeek's house and now things are about to get messy. And before the fight, our good boy asks how he's going to make up for that, but he's not going to make up for anything, he came here to finish them all off. So Jeek asks why he's talking so much, since when people have different opinions the strongest one is always correct, isn't it? And so the guy with the bun throws away the axe and draws his sword because he's not going to hold back anymore. But for Jeek, everyone always says that so he shouldn't lose too quickly. Then he went for it and Jeek went along, and the guy with the bun was using the immutable noon technique, and Jeek found it interesting and ended up blocking all attacks saying that's a pretty cool technique, and actually the guy thought it was absurd because that's a technique from the Hua Mountain sect. So he asks who the hell he is and where he came from, but Jeek doesn't have any of that, he just uses the martial art of the demon slaying technique that his brother taught him, and according to him, no one has been able to last more than one blow and he also had fun watching the technique of the guy with the bun. Then the man asks if he can copy him, but he can only try. Jeek went in using the same technique, while the guy is shocked because this is the final technique and the mystery of the 6 combinations of the Hua Mountain sword, and it may seem simple but several variations can be made with it, and the 6 sword combinations are the basis of the sword blossoming technique and therefore it must be taught to all disciples of the Hua Mountain, and even the disciples have difficulty understanding the mystery of this technique, but Li Muriang managed to understand and became a martial master who took over the Hunan province and everyone who came at him was destroyed. But Jeek was using that technique just from seeing it once, so he thinks he should stay calm since the real body must be back there. But when Jeek arrived swinging the sword all the bodies were real, meaning he not only copied but surpassed Li Muriang, and so he himself fell before Jeek finished using the technique, and as he passed out, he'll just have to cut off his head, right? Then the guy yells saying he's still alive and he'll never come near the fortress of the 5 peaks again, and he swears by his right arm. So Jeek walks away saying it's better he keeps his promise, and thus the fortress of the 5 peaks won the battle as the rival army retreated. And there was a man up there watching everything that happened. And this way, except for the smaller merchant unions in the province of Hunan, 3 of the largest merchant unions fell, and eventually even the Mansa Union was defeated, and it can be said that this is a major change in the balance of power. And according to rumors, the numbers of the fortress of the 5 peaks will increase even more. So, the long-haired guy says that even though it's better to attack before they get stronger, he thinks that young bandit might be the disciple of the chief commander of the Green Forest because it wouldn't make sense for him to be so strong like this. And he also appeared at a time when the Lord was trying to expand his territory. So, if he is indeed a disciple, it's better for them to stay away. But the guy just breaks the table saying how they can't run away from bandits, because if they did, the Mansu Merchant Union would be the laughingstock of the entire region, and this guy is nothing more than the leader of that union. But the other guy says he can't handle it either, and it's true because that guy is on a different level and he was also the one up there watching the fight. And so the boss says he's going to Huguang province, because there is Wudong Mountain, and even if he were an external disciple, he learned in the Wudong sect and his master is the elder of the sect, the wise Chunji. And this Wudong sect is one of the 10 great sects and its direct disciples are on a level they can't even imagine. So, the plan is to ask the master to lend one of these disciples to finish off Jeek and destroy the fortress of the 5 peaks. And now we're in Haija village, at the most expensive restaurant, but of course they don't need to worry about anything because Jeek, the strongest in Hunan province, came alone. But he thinks it's a bit exaggerated and these clothes are too expensive. But according to the pink-haired one, it's okay because he has already earned a lot of money for the fortress, and the second brother himself gave money to them and made them promise that Jeek would have a great time. And he takes the opportunity to ask who this woman is because he's never seen her before. And her name is Soha, she joined the fortress a week ago. But at that moment, a bald guy came up asking if he hadn't seen her around here, and the other one asks who the jerk is. But she was already fed up and told the bald guy to go away because she didn't want to break this table full of food and he doesn't need to die. So both sides leave happy. And he immediately started touching them, saying his patience has limits. But Jeek tells him to stop right there and says that since he's in a good mood, he'll count to 10, and if the guy leaves, his life will be spared. And the bald guy was furious. While the pink-haired one said he's going to die because they're from the fortress of the 5 peaks and that guy there is the sword-wielding bandit. and since he's still there, it was just a kick in the gut that broke everything, and outside, there was a guy with a lot of pressure. Minutes before that, the union leader was saying he'd call the carriage for him and asks why he came personally, since this is the elder of the Wudong sect, the wise Chun-ji, and he, in reality, didn't expect him to come in person, because when they hear that he called an elder to subdue mere bandits, he'll be a laughingstock. And since he's letting these rumors affect him, the wise one says he still has much to learn, and after the end of this incident, he should go for isolated training and train his body and mind. But it was at that same moment that the bald guy flew out of the restaurant, and there was the guy with insane pressure outside. And when the leader came to see the commotion, that brat was the bandit from the fortress. So he arrives saying it's him and him, but the master just tells him to stop causing trouble and walks towards the carriage, while Jeek noticed that guy had a sinister energy. But the pink-haired one came saying how can he destroy everything like that because the boss said they shouldn't cause trouble, but it was the guy who annoyed him first, and he even gave him 10 seconds to run, and still he had to kick over the food table. And this way, with all the money left, they should still afford soup and rice after paying for the repairs, and unfortunately, they won't be able to buy clothes for Sobek, who was excited to dress like a bandit. But wait, she never said that, and she just covers her mouth saying that next time they'll buy. Then Jeek, not understanding, tells her to buy clothes instead of food, but that still wouldn't be enough, and if he's sorry for that, he should start listening to one of their requests, and our naive Scarlet Boy says he'll do anything. So the pink-haired one asks him to teach martial arts to them. And then we go back to the cowardly leader who was asking why didn't he get rid of the bandit right there, but there were rumors that he was a disciple of the demon lord who devastates the heavens, but probably not, because if he had a disciple as good as that, rumors would have spread long ago, and that's why he's starting to think it was a good idea to come here, because he just found a martial arts genius. So, 3 days ago, at Wudong Mountain, the sect leader brought Longjing tea leaves as a gift for Chun-ji, and since he brought something so valuable, there must be something he wants to say, and in fact, the merchants are having major issues with the Fortress of the Five Peaks and the recent movements of the Green Forest. And in this case, the leader of the Merchants Union seems to be his external disciple, and the bearded one asks if he remembers how the Moon Fairy sect was a threat to the Miram world, and after that incident, he feels that the Orthodox Alliance must grow stronger because the Moon Fairy attempted to use its terrible martial arts to take over the Central Plain, and even though the Sword Emperor and the Moonbreaker protected the world, they can no longer rely on their forces because who can guarantee that the world will not face other threats like those? Unorthodox sects are also not exceptions to being future threats because the commander of the Green Forest killed numerous warriors, and today in the Miram world there would be no one who could rival him, so before they can rely on the Lord who devastates the heavens, he wants him to finish them off completely because then the sect could increase its influence to Hunan province, and that would be like killing two birds with one stone. However, Chun-ji has a condition: he will subdue the Fortress of the Five Peaks on his own. Then he asks why he would do that, but as he has managed this place for the past 10 years, he has seen countless divinations, and strangely, whenever he tried, he never saw luck, and he also never saw bad luck. But the reading he had this morning was different because it was a great fortune, and so he is sure that this is an opportunity, since the sword-wielding bandit has a different energy, and if he takes care of him as a sect disciple, he can become the most powerful swordsman in the world. And then the question arises, will he succeed, or will the great fortune be the big beating he will take? And so, on the mountain of the Five Peaks, the construction was completed, and this is the Harmony Pavilion of the fortress. As they were growing rapidly, the Daviol fortress helped them build some places, and so the first brother recruited carpenters, counselors, and their families. But then a guy comes running asking if he saw Jeek, but he's actually in the forest teaching the girls. And there he says they need to memorize 300 words first. Those who want to obtain the 9 celestial energies must first conquer their own hearts. Then they say that's too hard, because 100 is already too much, now imagine 300. So he tells them to close their eyes and follow him gradually, which makes it easier, and then they closed their eyes and focused on breathing, and he also did the same. Until later they woke up and Jeek was still focused, while inside his mind, he was handling his sword. But he heard a voice telling him to calm down and focus only on the voices of his heart, and asking who he is, he sees himself when he was young, that is, the person from the mirror. Then they started to move, and the concepts that seemed vague were coming together one by one, until some light leaves appeared above his head, and when he woke up, they disappeared. Then the girls ask if they will be able to do it if they continue training, and so they started to return to the fortress. But when they got there, only the chief was there, while everyone else disappeared, and in fact, they didn't disappear, they fled because the merchant union managed to involve the sage Chun-ji, and they are coming to attack. So the first brother asks what they want to do, and since they will arrive tomorrow, he suggests they flee. Then he asks the old man, but in his view, the fortress of the 5 peaks was already done because the sage Chunji is an elder of the Wudong sect. He is the strongest one there and his disciples are also incredibly powerful, and if he wants to deal with these monsters, just pray for the neck to stay on the head. And so the brother asks Jeek, and he also doesn't know what to do. The grumpy old man is already grunting that he's leaving because he doesn't plan to wait for death. And after seeing the old man's attitude, everyone else left, while only the real ones we know who they are. And Jeek, seeing this, asks the first brother if the sage can cut a person with a leaf. So, the leaf thing got into his head too, right? The chief says he doesn't think so. And can anyone really do that? But if he's not that strong, Jeek says he can fight him. The chief gets excited, but remembering what the old man said, there's a chance the sage is very strong and could kill Jeek. So he can't put this kid in a life or death situation. And so, he begins to say that it's been 5 years since they've been living here, and especially this year we had new members and several good things happened. But he's thinking he can't risk and put all these people in a situation where they could die. So, he says from this moment on the mountain of the 5 peaks is disbanded. Until at night, the chief was alone thinking that he himself wouldn't be able to escape from here. But suddenly a rope loosens up there and here comes Wood. And in fact, who was down there was the second brother saying that he really thought they would leave like that, and in fact, everyone is still here. Because if they were to die, they would die together. And so, they repaired the walls again and set up a bonfire. While the chief was saying that it would be good to alternate shifts to stand guard, as they might face a surprise attack. So now Rasenya stands up saying that now that they have decided to stand together in life and in death, he should make them his family too. And this way, the whole family was reunited. Shu-san is now number 8, Cheyenne is number 9, Sobik is number 10. From today onwards, they are all siblings of the same family. And thus, at dawn, the sage Chunji was coming with his entire army. While Jeek couldn't sleep at all thinking if he could win against someone like the sage. But there's no choice because he needs to win for everyone to live together. But at that moment, the chief ended up startling him because he was also awake. And he asks why he wasn't sleeping. And Jeek says he doesn't sleep much even though he has a black eye. He looks like me. And so the chief draws his sword because they are going to have a duel to relax their muscles. The chief apologizes for depending on him again. But at that moment, a shout comes from outside calling for the fortress of the 5 peaks. And the chief jumps onto the wall saying how their leader is pathetic because he went to cry and beg for the sage Chunji to come here. And even if someone stronger than the sage were here, they wouldn't be shaken. So the sage steps forward and shouts. Jeek realizes it's going to be a mess and tells the chief to get out of there. At that moment, the entire bottom wall was destroyed, and the sage appeared in front of the chief with a sword. But at that moment, Jeek simply sent a slashing attack to protect the chief, and the sage was impressed. And then, in happiness, he went on the offensive, while Jeek raised his sword and delivered a strike from the dragon's claws. In an instant the young man is attacking more directly. In a sword impasse, Jeek is thrown away. What kind of monster is the sage? If you can feel an overwhelming force just by crossing swords with him. However, the Scarlet Boy believes himself to be much stronger. The opponent wonders about the reason for such presumption. It is truly surprising that the boy can wield sword energy at such a young age, yet there are still limits to his arrogance. Recalling the past, we see that this is not their first encounter. Even back then, the self-proclaimed sage was no match for the protagonist, at least from his perspective. And it doesn't stop there. The young man even claims to be glad that Chunji is the sage. After all, the old man doesn't seem very strong. The enemy seems to become excited for a moment. This kind of attitude is everything he was looking for, seeking numerous talents while traveling through Jianghu. He had never met anyone so brave, especially since all the martial warriors in that region kneeled before his overwhelming presence. If the Scarlet Boy is truly as skilled as he thinks, this is the time to prove it. The two return to crossing swords in the sky. Everyone watches the battle. We see the boss quite weakened, wondering what's happening. His companion explains the situation, informing that at this very moment, the protagonist and the sage are fighting equally. In the midst of the fight, the old man distances himself and decides to elevate the level of his technique. However, the Scarlet Boy is not intimidated and responds in kind by approaching the adversary, thus blocking his attack. A little nervous, we follow the thoughts of the elder. Is it possible that this young man could really be the disciple of the sky-destroying demonic lord? Upon asking the boy who his master would be, in a symbolic gesture gesture he merely raises his sword. The old man seems satisfied, now understanding why he received a great fortune omen in the divination. The strength of the Scarlet Boy may be enough to learn all the advanced techniques of the Wudong sect. Then suddenly the flow of energy from the man changes. The technique he uses is called Taiji Mystique, a power that only the elders of the group can learn. Jeek looks with hostility, soon deciding to attack, but is surprised to be easily overthrown. When he turns his attention back to the opponent, he cannot find him. However, the man was located behind him preparing a blow from which the young man admits he cannot escape. Oh read. By some miracle, it's possible to dodge that fatal technique, perhaps because the elder had no intention of ending the fight so quickly. The attacks keep coming towards Jeek, who defends against them, until the sage decides to take things a bit more seriously, showing an unusual strength. Instead of being afraid, our boy taunts the enemy to annoy him as much as possible. Meanwhile, the martial artists try to save themselves from the explosion. As the blow finishes, all that remains around are rubble. Chun didn't limit his power due to so much excitement. It had been a long time since he had fought without holding back. The man was too convinced, however, his presumption ends when he notices a golden aura, and terror takes over, as that energy takes the form of a golden dragon. Even the Lord who was recently confident seems shaken. The system of humiliating secondary characters with stolen power is on point. Congratulations to the author of the work. Suddenly we're taken to the east side of Luoyang, in Waryeong's mansion. We observe several people training, and others eating at a sort of banquet. A scarlet-haired boy appears thanking everyone for their presence, and he finishes his thought by saying he has learned many things after training for several years in the Nangong clan. Since he has learned more techniques, the young man would like to show them a glimpse of his strength. An old woman starts grumbling, commenting on Marabak's martial art that reached 7 stars, saying that it should be enough to recognize him as a martial master. After swinging the sword a few times, the observers are impressed, questioning the nature of that technique. Concentrating deeply, the boy summons the image of a great dragon, using its claws to cleave the earth, then attacks for the last time, splitting the ground in 3 directions. Everyone immediately realizes this is an extremely rare power. We return to the present, where the infamous sage remains perplexed. The protagonist begins to murmur. After all, his enemy was hiding his true strength. From that moment on, the two would fight seriously. This doesn't make the old man sad. In fact, he seems even more excited. The situation couldn't be better. To challenge him like this one must be at least crazy. Accepting the challenge to fight with all his might, the old man invests in a thrust with his sword. Our boy also prepares to cross blades, and even uses the claw technique that destroys the earth in different parts. The sage looks back surprised. The Scarlet Boy warns not to get distracted in the midst of battle, and in an instant, he launches into the attack, resulting in a final confrontation. This last moment would determine the winner. Finally, it seems to be over. With a cold expression, the sage asks if he could have the honor of knowing the boy's name. The protagonist responds to be Jeokha, which means Scarlet Boy. Upon hearing this, the old man drops his sword and collapses to the ground. I must say he was a good opponent. The people around are impressed by the outcome of the fight. The boy turns with a smile on his face, informing his boss that he won the fight. The man is impressed for a moment and then jumps for joy along with his comrades. Even the girls got excited. The young man gets a VIP ride on the boss's back. This victory is a big step for the Five Peaks Fortress. The sage is crawling while his subordinate wonders what the possibility is of his master losing, then rushes to his aid, noticing serious wounds, saying that his superior needs to treat this immediately. The old man is happy after taking a beating of a lifetime. It's understandable, after all, the man didn't get beaten by just anyone. The elder mentions seeing angels calling him from nearby. When the moment of happiness ends, the man considers whether it is possible to judge them, but that would be difficult, as he would need to raise an army. Regarding the Scarlet Boy, it is strictly forbidden to even think about facing him. Suddenly we are taken to Hunan province, where 2 people are discussing the recent defeat of Sage Chun-ji. The young man with a cap on his head says that these rumors are ridiculous. Such a strong figure would not lose to mere mountain bandits. A mysterious man gets involved in the conversation, commenting on the great ability of the Scarlet Boy, saying that it is possible that the great elder of the Wudong sect was completely defeated by the boy. He himself, the leader of the Nanyang Merchant Union, named Li Muryang, personally experienced the protagonist's sword. Those movements, the technique was amazing to the point of leaving him completely powerless. A group of warriors who also lost to Jeek appear excited. Losing is not usually a source of pride. Who knows what's going on in these guys' heads? It's no longer a secret to absolutely anyone in Han province. The Union failed to defeat their enemies. This brought good fame to the Five Peaks Fortress. Still, for the sake of the sect, the Union leader tried to end the rumors to protect the merchant's reputation. However, the protagonist's group is already being recognized as one of the strongest, when not long ago they were not even known. At the same time, rumors claimed that 10 heroes protected the Five Peaks fortress, among them one name in particular became famous. Exactly, my friends, it's Jeek. A man is reporting the situation, saying that hundreds of Union warriors were retired early by 10 soldiers from the Five Peaks, hence they became known as the 10 Legends. The figure, who seems to be a mobster, reflects on all this fame. After all, a few months ago there were only 7 bandits. Their group has grown a lot. They must have been lucky enough to bring someone strong enough to fight together. Another old man appears, talking about the mission's failure. The guy asks about the base of the Green Forest, located in Mansapyeong, as it is necessary to check the level of the mountain bandits. Returning to the main subjects, a beggar is kneeling in front of the boss, begging for mercy for abandoning his people. The leader asks the scoundrel to stand up. The guy obeys the order, but is terrified, believing he would be punished. However, the boss just welcomes him, receiving him with a warm hug. It's even strange for someone who thought they had already been sentenced to a life of selling embarrassing images to pay off debts with the loan shark. The boy thanks for the kindness with tears in his eyes. A companion of the boss suddenly appears, questioning if a slightly stricter punishment would be appropriate. Thus the fortress will seem weak to others. They need to choose people loyal enough not to put them in danger. The commander imparts some wisdom to Gomyeong, saying the following: the man who plants sunflower seeds on his head makes his hair grow. Oops, wrong passage. Actually, they need to work to be recognized as part of the Green Forest. The bald guy wonders how they will do that. The boss continues, stating that the organization's summit will happen soon. They will use this occasion to create powerful allies, but for that, they need people capable of protecting their territory while they are away from home. Now things start to make sense for Gomyeong. Still, the more mouths to feed demand more food as well, and for that, they will need help. By the way, our Scarlet Boy seems to be busy looking for the sage. A moment later the old man appears, with an eagle on his arm. A message was addressed to him requesting his return to the sect. After seeing the message, the sage looks back a little surprised, welcoming the protagonist, who seems a little tired. The young man asks if the man won't go back. As a response, he gets a smile. The old man says he has no reason to return. It's been some time since he took a vacation, so he's thinking of enjoying a few days. The boy is actually bothered because the lazy one there is resting in a place like this instead of going to the merchant union. Quickly, the elder interrupts the young man's reasoning by asking if the boy would accept his proposal. Confused about the meaning of that, Jeek imagines that the old rascal must want him as a disciple. In reality, it's nothing like that. At a certain point in the story, the old man was called the strongest practitioner of the Wodong group because he was able to accumulate internal energy as effectively as anyone else, and understand all the advanced teachings of the technique, yet there is a power that even a genius like him cannot fully master. For 30 years, the man has trained in the mystic Taiji swordsmanship. However, he has not been able to surpass the limits of the 4 ultimatums. Our boy has no idea about the nature of these 4 ultimatums, and the old man apparently doesn't want to explain. Instead, he only expresses his desire to learn from the boy. The boy seems very unhappy about this. Even if he ends up training him, teaching the technique of the demon-slaying blade is out of the question because it is too precious to Gomyeong. The man clarifies his interests. The truth is that it would be great to learn this art too, but it won't be necessary. Just observing and learning while the Scarlet Boy fights is enough. Furthermore, striking a deal between the two would be beneficial for both parties. With that said, the old man attacks the young man, gathering strength in his fist. If the protagonist had lice, he just got rid of them. The impact of the blow even destroyed part of the forest. This power is something that can be passed on with one condition. Both must have a reciprocal relationship of teaching. If the Scarlet Boy tells the sage what is lacking in his technique to be perfected, the old man will return the favor. And he continues explaining, the young man can be really strong. However, he has not yet reached his full potential because he probably does not understand the basic theories of martial arts. After mastering this, the warrior's level evolves into something deeper. Well, it's time for training. The two begin to spend time with the purpose of getting stronger, improving in all aspects. A certain amount of time seems to have passed, and both are walking peacefully while watching some children playing. One of them goes to the old man to give him a flower. The old man thanks him, and caresses the boy's head. Our protagonist starts grumbling, saying he hates kids. The reason for this doesn't seem clear to his new companion, clarifying the reason for his hatred. The truth is that children have malicious minds, capable of committing atrocities against others. Regardless, the man believes in the kindness of all the inhabitants of the fortress, yet Jeek doesn't change his ideas. That place is no different from any other. It's just a populated territory. At the end of the day, a woman is gathering firewood, wondering if it's enough. She concludes that she should return. Suddenly a hand falls on her shoulder. The elder appears and says he will also pick up wood. This situation is unpleasant for the girl. After all, a sect leader shouldn't do anything like that. However, such things are not a bother for a man with one foot in the grave. As with age, his time becomes increasingly idle. From the perspective of ordinary people, a group master is someone noble, supposed to have everything available. The sage comments that he used to have prejudice against the mountain bandits. The young woman questions why he seems to have changed his mind. The reason is that it is a peaceful place and good to live in. Our girl agrees, this region is different from other communities, most of which used to be inhabited by thieves. Many of the fortress residents moved there because it's hard to live decently. Even the girl was a victim of this cruel world, as she was almost sold to a brothel. The boss was great to her as he gave her work, besides Jeek's protection that makes that region a peaceful place. The man is curious about how the Scarlet Boy joined the group. Even though not knowing the details, the girl recounts that in the past the boy was saved by the boss when he was about to die. This leaves the old man a little intrigued, risking his life to protect everyone to repay a kind of debt. If the girl had to guess, she would say it's for a different reason. It's possible that the Scarlet Boy considers the village as part of his family. Well, enough chit-chat, it's time to go back with the wood. We change the scene and witness something rather sinister. A group of guys seems to be getting eliminated. The masked man even sucked the soul out of this bald guy. After releasing the poor fellow, the man congratulates his master for reaching the level of great demonic general. She affirms that the long-awaited moment has finally arrived. The anger she held for the past 20 years has not been forgotten for a single day. The Sword Emperor, the Moonlight Swordsman, and all the other sects in Jianghu knelt before the Moon Fairy. Suddenly we are introduced to the notorious demon of Hunan province. The northern sword of Gummel, called Shim Yangak, seems to be in quite a predicament. In a bar, we see a bunch of old folks sitting around chatting. The topic relates to stories about the defeat of the Merchant Union. It seems to be a very popular rumor, as it is widely discussed by people. The Northern Sword doesn't believe in these nonsense, as do most other masters. After all, such a large organization would crush a small group like the Five Peaks Fortress. It's likely that no attack happened according to Shim. Perhaps the sage destroyed the fortress completely and defeated the arrogant Scarlet Boy along with all his brothers. If that happened, the entire region would be nothing more than an uninhabited area, and with the absence of a leader, he would appear as a hero and become the great chief of the whole area. This would be their great triumph. However, now it's all over. Greedy old man, indeed. At the adjacent table, people seem to be making similar comments, paying special attention to the 10 heroes of the Five Peaks, saying they are very powerful. The old man wonders if there would be any chance of facing them. After all, such strength was not within his expectations. In fact, many people abandoned the fortress, but the boss welcomed them all back. The elders discuss what they should do, as their objective was not completed. Shim's theory is that the Merchant Union was bluffing when confirming the inclusion of a master in subjugating mere bandits. A large part of the opportunists at the table begin to complain about the grumpy old man's flawed plan, which infuriates him. One of the men talks about all the trust placed in the Northern Sword of Gummel. Even when Beck suggested they go to the Crimson Wind Fortress, they decided to refuse the invitation and follow the old man. But if they are to remain loyal, they need something to believe in. People continue to discuss, if the rumors are true, then the fortress accepts deserters back, which is quite beneficial for the group as a whole because the more soldiers, the better to consolidate the title of the Green Forest. Perhaps if the group brings flowers and chocolate, the boss will accept them as members of the gang. The bald guy starts to opine, saying it's a terrible idea. After all, the Scarlet Boy must be even more violent than before. This won't make things so simple. Poor guy just spoke the truth and got punched for it. A guy tries to argue, no one in the village should suspect they fled. Surely they eagerly await the team's return. Thinking a little about it, the leader believes it to be true. Returning to the Five Peaks Fortress, we see several people closely watching some kind of abnormal activity. Well, who was in front of them was precisely the old man's group. Their return, in particular, is a bold move. After all, they were the first deserters when the territory began to be threatened. No one is happy to see them. However, the approval of all is not necessary. The only opinion that really matters is that of the boss according to the Northern Sword. His subordinate asks if the commander will believe the story they created. In case the man is deceived, it won't change the people's feelings or the way they will be treated with hostility. The old man says not to worry, no citizen would dare to offend them directly. As he speaks, the man looks ahead and sees remnants of a battle. That was certainly the result of a violent fight, and only one person in the fortress is capable of doing such a thing. But no matter how strong Jeek is, it's not the kind of mark that a technique like the demon-slaying sword could make. Suddenly an individual appears, catching the group's attention, questioning the audacity of those people to return as if nothing had happened. The Northern Sword instinctively turns, asking who would dare to insult him in such a way. With a smile on his face and an axe on his back, the man proudly introduces himself. he was Lee Chulson. The old head calls the guy crazy. Where's the respect for the elders? The man drops his axe, seething with anger. After all, it should be the old man who should be showing proper respect. At the chief's base, we see the messenger notifying the arrival of Shim and his group. The commander reflects a bit on the sudden return. The bald advisor seems angry, however, he praises him in a way, as the Northern Sword must have a lot of courage to return in this manner. Our boss shouldn't take them back so easily. The advisor never liked the cunning old man. Whatever reason he had for abandoning the battle, he did it dishonorably, even encouraging the soldiers to go alone. Aware of the circumstances, the boss states that the old man is a very strong martial warrior, enough to be recognized as a demon, which makes him an extremely valuable asset in times of conflict. The bald man stands firm in his opinion. The fortress is able to defend itself now. Undoubtedly they are capable of fighting against Shim and his group. For the leader, this is not necessarily true. Although they lost pathetically against the Scarlet Boy, that old man has very beautiful martial arts. We return to follow the impasse between old acquaintances. Their conversation is full of provocations. Inevitably, the two end up facing each other. The white-haired man takes the initiative, going after his opponent, who is also ready to receive the attack. By blocking the old man, the man becomes convinced of victory, even pushing him away, demonstrating superiority in strength. One of the deserters stays alert. Chulson is a notable opponent, but his power level has never been enough to gain an advantage when it comes to powerful martial warriors like the Grumpy Shim. The evolution of an artist in such a short period is surprising. What could be the source of such sudden power? The man practically answers the question, saying he was trained by the Scarlet Boy. Apparently, the old man isn't as strong as they say. This leaves the Grumpy man quite unhappy. It's true, there's a kind of evolution compared to Chuzan's previous level, however, it's still not enough to be a battle worthy of effort. With a single blow, the man turns into an ostrich. Regaining his composure, the young man demonstrates willpower by attacking again. This infuriates his opponent. For challenging him, his fate was only one. So the Northern Sword employs a deadly technique, but is abruptly stopped by the old man with just one finger. This leaves him perplexed. What's happening? The old man was stopped from using lethal power, yet this shouldn't be possible. The unfolding of events makes it evident that there's another monster in the area besides the Scarlet Boy. The fallen man says he will punish Shim. Chulson is determined to win and show all his capability to the wise Chunji. It's at this moment that the grumpy one notices the figure before him. Could that really be the wise one, the one sent to subdue the entire area? The white-haired one starts shaking all over. There was still some doubt, until the man introduces himself as the Elder of Wudong. So the rumors were correct. Immediately he is questioned why the sage remained in the Green Forest Fortress, but according to Chun, this simply doesn't interest him. Shim isn't even part of the territory. Soon after, the protagonist appears welcoming the old man, who would have thought he really returned. So maybe he's ready to endure the punishment resulting from his actions. We advance a little in time and observe the old man exercising. You know, that's good in a way, exercising a little won't hurt. As he walks, the grumpy one begins to reflect on all his past glory, and to think he used to rule the province of Hunan. How he has fallen so far as to assume such a humiliating position. Even though all worn out, the man swears not to forget the events of that day, promising to avenge the Scarlet Boy, as hours ago he had taken a beating from the protagonist. We follow him again, as he continues angrily, until a certain point, where a mysterious energy begins to emanate from an unknown location. The pressure surpasses that of Jeek himself. Further on, we discover the source of this power. The sage Chunji, holder of a giant ball and penetrating eyes. Our dear elder seems to be training. The Scarlet Boy advances on the elder's jugular. It seems the old man's mastery with his technique has increased, allowing him to surpass the protagonist. However, when attacking, Jeek easily holds back the blow, making him wonder if something has changed. Unfortunately, it was too early to judge, because suddenly a great explosive aura emerges. My condolences to the worms and ants of the place, they must have evaporated. The fight spectator is impressed. Not even the Scarlet Boy would be able to dodge that. The unexpected happens, but for us it's no surprise. The boy is in a good mood. After all, he can no longer use just the demon-slaying technique to block the old man's attacks. Finally, the time has come to demonstrate all his potential by using the celestial art in its second form. Not even the sky can contain the power of the blow. Noting this, the white-haired one is impressed. Chun admits that if he had been hit, there wouldn't be a single hair left to tell the tale. The protagonist warns that the man hasn't even shown his full potential. But according to the sage, there's no reason to reveal everything, as he has already achieved his goal. It's time to leave. Well, it's not necessarily the ending the protagonist expected. Things were just starting to heat up now. now. You can even understand the old man's side. After all, if he goes back home full of injuries, he'll end up losing prestige. Still, it's a pity. The boy even wondered if there would be a new bandit in the mountains. However, the elder is determined to return to the Wudong sect, but that doesn't mean he'll forget the boy's kindness. Could this be the beginning of a long friendship? Both spent a lot of time training, and it's revealed that for Chun, it was meaningful to witness Jeek's evolution. One day the boy will appear in Murim. This was their farewell. Shim suddenly gave up on revenge. A month later, a person appears climbing the mountains. Suddenly a bear appears threatening him, but there's a reason for that. The wretch eliminated the animal's cubs, and still makes light of it. Then, he annihilates the mother bear in seconds. This guy's name is Een, the Sovereign Wind. We are introduced to the commander of the Green Forest, Lord Sukmohi, considered one of the strongest in the world. He has never been defeated, and used to work in the Shaolin Temple, aiming to learn techniques, but refused to shave his head. Even though he was strong, he was far from valuing Buddhism. One day the boy was cleaning a Buddha statue and broke it. His fate changed there. Inside it was a manual of techniques from the Black Paradise Azura. By mastering these arts, the man left the temple and wandered the world recruiting bandits in Jianghu to pass on his techniques. The group became strong enough to threaten any elder. Thus, the 12 demon generals were born. In the Fortress of the Five Peaks, we see a man shouting for the commander of the place, informing that he is an emissary of the Green Forest and a direct disciple of the Demon Lord. The chief arrives at the scene and finds the drunkard shouting about how glorious he is. People don't know how to react to the situation, even the leader seems confused. The drunkard encounters 9 of the 10 heroes and asks about the last one in the group. The chief says the last member is training in isolation. For the chubby guy, that's no excuse. If he's breathing, he has to greet him. A guy comments on Jeek. Actually, the boy is taking a nap in the room. Gomyeong asks for silence, saying that if the protagonist meets that drunkard, it could end up in a coffin and a black candle. The chubby guy starts praising the group. If they were able to survive for so long, they must be strong. If they keep up the good behavior, they won't have problems. The chief bows and informs to keep that in mind. Besides, he offers hospitality to the visitor. However, the old man is interested in having some fun with the 2 girls there. Our leader comments that those 2 are heroines. Perhaps the chubby guy prefers to enjoy something different. Even better for the demon general, they were attractive before, and now they're heroines on top of that. Trying to distract the dirty old man, the chief changes the subject, but is soon interrupted by the drunkard. The guy says he's not done yet. The woman asks the reason behind such an important visit. The man gets excited upon hearing a female voice. There are only men training in the sections. There's a reason he's visiting them, and it's to see if the group deserves to receive the flag of the Green Forest. If they're not worthy, everyone will get a brand new tombstone. Anyway, their reputation is good, and they've contributed to increasing the fame of the Green Forest, not to mention the beautiful ladies who are part of the group. This guy doesn't miss an opportunity. So the old man accepts the mountain bandits as part of the Green Forest. The chief receives a scroll, invited to attend the Grand Summit in Mansapian, where a unification tournament is being held. Finally, they've been recognized. Now that the message is delivered, the old man would like to have some fun there in the fortress. The chief says he'll treat him very well and sends him to an entertainment house. Now the priority is to get out of there before the monster wakes up and knocks out this drunkard. Already in the pleasure house, the old man seems to be well accommodated, surrounded by women. However, the demon is only interested in the heroines and orders them to be brought to him. The chief doesn't seem to obey the order. Moreover, he tries to explain himself. But the Windine doesn't want to hear excuses. If they don't come to his room, everyone will die. In the fortress, we see the 2 girls sleeping. Suddenly they wake up to the sound of screams. Upon checking what's happening, the girls come face to face with the drunkard, and the old man quickly orders them to set the table for them. The chief tries to calm the man down, but this only makes him more agitated. How dare an inferior touch him? Are they testing his patience? The leader tries to clarify things, saying he's trying to avoid trouble for the Wind Sovereign himself. The guy gets confused, then starts reaffirming his authority over that region. As they're disobeying him, they'll feel his wrath. This would indeed happen if someone didn't interrupt him. A voice emerges asking who's making so much noise at night. Eam tries to retort, but the voice persists. If the man is out of his mind, then he should go home instead of causing trouble. The words seem to come from one of the girl's mouths. The girl quickly becomes frightened. The demon demands that the speaker reveal himself in order to eliminate him, and the scarlet boy appears still yawning. Ian wonders if the boy is crazy, otherwise he wouldn't act like that, and moreover, the people around don't seem distressed. The boy stands still. The drunkard concludes that dirtying his hands would be a waste of time. It's better to just ignore it. However, Jeek questions if the man is running away. Perhaps he's scared. The chubby guy doesn't take this insult lightly. so he attacks immediately. Well, we're done here. Whoever checks out the other videos gets 7 years of luck and a girlfriend until the end of 2024. Goodbye.